You're now listening to the Shift Training Show, where we're focused on positively impacting the quality of human interaction. Today, we have a guest, Joe LaRussa of Homegrown Leadership. He is a small city mayor. He's an entrepreneur and a fantastic leader. I myself have heard him tell amazing stories. I also think that he's doing a great job of leading in his household as well. Today, he's going to help us to better understand more about leadership, not just in the workplace, at home, and also kind of a little bit of how that translates. So, Joe, welcome to the show. If you would like to, please share a little bit more about yourself if I missed anything.
Oh, thanks, Flip. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak to you and your audience. So yeah, Homegrown Leadership is all about helping frustrated parents and spouses who are crushing it at work but have chaos at home take what's already making them successful in other spheres, whether it's community service or in the marketplace, and just transferring those skills that they already have that are making them successful into their households so that they can build a stronger household and be better leaders overall.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. So let's get right into it. I think one of the things that kind of I think happens a lot is, and you'll have to tell me a little bit about this, but we think that maybe we lead differently at work than at home, or sometimes we show up differently at work than at home. We kind of like compartmentalize that, keep things separate. But when we first do that, I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect that doesn't serve us. I guess my first question when it comes to that is like, I know you've seen leadership up close at home and you've also seen it in organizations. And like, where do you see that professionals who try to make that separation, where that might actually not really work for them?
Well, that's absolutely the disconnect that happened. That was my aha moment, is when I was driving home one night and I realized that I was having a lot of success at work. I had a team that was trusting me and following and we were doing great work, and we were getting all kinds of industry recognition and delivering our projects, on budget, on time, just doing a lot of things right. And at home, it was really difficult because we were trying to make decisions about what to have for dinner that night. And seemed like an insurmountable task. So it just struck me one night on the drive home, how can it be that I'm thinking 3 to 5 years out at work, right? And thinking about the future, and at home, like, we can't get to dinner. And that was really where I figured out that this compartmentalization that we're taught, right? Leave your work self at work and bring your home self home, and never the two shall meet. It really is a myth that needs to be broken, because all of the skills and abilities that we're taught at work or in service, I mean, you've probably been through it yourself. You go to trainings, you listen to speakers, you have, companies invest in bringing people in to build the leadership capability of their organizations. And we just take all of that and we put it in our briefcase or in our laptop or in our backpack and pack it all away and stash it in the closet. And we come home and we just don't use any of it. And that's where it matters the most. So all this training and all this skill and all this ability, that's really what the aha moment was for me, is taking those things that I was packing away with my laptop at the end of the day and really leaving them unpacked and bringing them home and putting them to work for my household.
Awesome. Wow. So when you think about the way that you just articulated that, what do you think that separation is costing people? What do you think is probably like the biggest cost in like not applying those learned skills?
Sure. Well, first of all, on the quantitative side, if I think about, the value of leadership. So household leaders are doing basically a $140,000 job a year. If you were to calculate the unpaid hours that you spend leading your household, if you were paid for that work, it would be a $140,000 a year job. So that just gives you an idea of the level and the value of the work that you're doing in your home to lead it. So on the qualitative side, nobody expects their household to be a source of frustration, anxiety, anger. We want our household to be the thing that energizes us. We want it to be a source of pride, a source of joy, a source of peace. And that's what it feels like when it's not working. It feels like I mentioned before, it feels like anxiety. It feels like a stressful thing. But when it's working right, it's the thing that recharges you. So when you go back to work, you have more to give. But if you're draining the battery in both places, there's nothing left.
Yeah. Wow. You'll be completely tapped out, and with no place to recharge, you're just going to go faster. Wow. Okay. So
Yep.
I would say that there are some people who, like you mentioned, it is kind of almost normalized. So someone might say, that's just business. That's just how it is. Work's work and home is home, and they should be separate. I've been taught that. What do you think somebody might be avoiding in that? If they're not looking at this opportunity to bring in that additional leadership, what are some of the things that maybe you have found the person might be avoiding or not want to face?
Well, I just think it's easier to say, oh, I keep this separate, than acknowledging that you have a whole other set of variables or structures in the environment at work that enable leadership to thrive naturally. At home, it's very unstructured. If you're not intentional, or if you weren't taught how to lead your household by a parent or by a loved one, an uncle, a grandfather, a family member that didn't mentor you on how to effectively lead a household, or we are trapped in cultural norms based on our family of origin or our heritage. I'm a first generation Italian American. My father is right off the boat from Sicily, and he has very clear ideas about how a household should run. And I have to say, some of those things are good. Others of those things, some of them are no longer relevant. Some of them don't make sense in a modern age. Some of them don't make sense with the advent of technology that's available. The tools are different. So there's a lot of variables that drive that wedge between our work selves and our home selves. And naturally, it's just easy. It's the path of least resistance. It's human behavior. Oh, well, that's work is work and home is home. And it's really the person who can take both of those things and combine their powers for good, so to speak, where they start to get traction. And when they get traction at home, it radiates and it reverberates back into the workplace with higher engagement, more energy for your people, right? If I pour myself out into my interns at work, and then I come home and have nothing left for my children, the next generation of leaders who I'm sitting in my own house. But if I pour myself into them and get that energy to go then pour myself into my interns at work, it becomes a positive reinforcing loop, because I'm investing in both places, and that is having a positive return in my household and in my workplace.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. I love that. I think that sounds amazing. And I think most people would love to have their work and their home life feeding each other, having the ability to excel and grow. Can you share a story or think of a time when you've seen someone who is like really highly competent at work, but struggling at home?
For sure. And there are movie tropes about this. If you've watched, The Devil Wears Prada, right? Miranda Priestley, dynamo mogul, publishing mogul, and at home, if for those of you that have seen the movie, right, Anne Hathaway goes to deliver the binder at the end of the day and finds her weeping, or kind of down because she's super energized and powerful at work, but at home she's powerless. There's entire movie tropes about it. And that's how I got on this journey, was not only my own story, but I would notice at work when my people were struggling. I would notice that. And it had a real effect on the quality of their work, the amount of time they were able to spend, their engagement, their presence. It was noticeable. And so I, as a good, leader, I would coach and have my one-on-ones with them and say, so what's going on? And it was very rarely a work issue. It was always, well, I'm dealing with this. And it was something at home. And again, back to this wall of separation, right? If one of my engineers would come to me, they were like, well, I shouldn't be bringing my work stuff, or I shouldn't be bringing my home stuff to work. That would be the immediate answer. And I said, yeah, but you are bringing it to work. So now it's on me to help you get through this, because I need you to be on at work. And if this over here is hurting you, I had one engineer, he was an expat. He had moved from Mexico to come to the United States to fill a spot on my team. He was very effective, and he decided to make the jump and come to the United States. And he brought his family with him. Well, the first couple of weeks, the way we handled expatriates is we would house them in temporary lodging while they got a driver's license, found a house, got their affairs in order. Well, I noticed his work starting to I was getting feedback, hey, so-and-so's they're not showing up on time. Like there's stuff not happening. The work's not where it needs to be. So I asked him, and this was like 8 weeks after he got to the United States, and he didn't want to burden me with it. And I was like, it's okay. You can tell me, what is it? He says, well, we're still in the hotel. We haven't made any progress on any of these tasks that we're supposed to be making progress on. I said, you're still in temporary lodging with your whole family? And he looked at me and he kind of did one of these and looked down. He's like, yes, Joe, I'm still in temporary lodging. Flip, I got on the phone. I got him help. I got a person who spoke Spanish for his wife to help her go to the Secretary of State, get things done. Like we made moves, and 10 days later, they were out of the hotel.
Awesome.
But if he didn't tell me that that's what he was dealing with at home, I couldn't mobilize the resources to get him to the next step. And therefore, it was hurting his work. So that was a very distinct case where something at home was weighing on him. And can you imagine going home every day? Hey, did you talk to your boss today about getting us out of the hotel?
Yeah.
No, I didn't talk to you today. Right? Going home and speaking to your spouse. Can you imagine this conversation? And her, getting more frustrated, and the kids like laying on top of one another because you're in a 2 double bed hotel room for 8 weeks.
That's tough.
I mean, it was just when, and he came to me after, and he said, Joe, I'm so sorry that I didn't bring that to you sooner. I told him, I said, you got to bring that stuff to my attention, especially if it's something that I can do something about. Like if it was just packing boxes and moving, I probably still would have rolled up there with my truck and helped him move. You know what I mean? Like whatever it was, I was going to help him resolve it. But it turned out it was a log jam on our side because they didn't have the help that they needed to, settle themselves when they moved. So that's a very clear case where home life was affecting work life. And in my marketplace leadership, I had to activate and help my employee, solve a problem at home.
If someone realizes that they're leading well at work, but poorly at home, or vice versa, where would you recommend that they start?
Well, first I would say it's more a realization that there's a difference in the outcome, right? It's realizing that you're creating these opportunities for success in one sphere and not in another. And it's not because necessarily that someone's leading poorly. It's just that they haven't decided to take what's working and move it to the household. Okay. So for sure, the aha moment's got to come first, right? And realizing that the disconnect is there and really analyzing like you would do at work. If something wasn't working at work, what would you do? You would measure it to try to make it visible. Okay, how much time am I spending at home? Am I even present enough to exert leadership in my household, right? If I'm gone all day at my day job and I'm doing extracurriculars in the evening or staying out late with coworkers or going to other things after work or doing a lot of things and I'm not even home, well, then that's got to be visible for you to fix it.
Right.
If you are home, how are you spending that time? If you were told at work, you have to accomplish a goal, but you can't have more people, you can't have more money, you can't have more resources, but you still need to get the task done, what would you do? You would start looking where you can gain efficiency. Where can I free up resources to accomplish the task I've been given? So it's the same at home. If you don't know where your time is going and you don't know where your money's going, you have to start measuring so that you can make that visible and then attack those problems to create opportunity. And again, we only get a couple hours a day at home to exert leadership in the home, just naturally, right? We have sleep, we have to go to work, we have things we have to do, and then we have a couple of hours maybe a day to do leadership at home. So how are you going to make those 2 golden hours as effective as possible? Well, it can't be problem solving dialogue for 2 hours about, well, what about this? What about this? Right? Running a list. It's not an open issues review. That's not what it is. You'll never talk about the future if all you're doing is running the open issues list. Those things have to get solved through a system that gets them done so that your time when you're focusing on communication is focusing on the future. So the first point is realize that there's a disconnect. And then second point is figure out where the resources are going. Time, energy, money, those are the things that you have. If you don't know where you're spending them on, write it down. And I bring a lot of tools for people to help make that visible. And it's not forever. You just have to take a snapshot. I know people, sometimes they're like, Joe, do I really have to do a time journal? Yes, you do, because you're not able to articulate to me how you're spending your time, right? I have a very good example from the workplace. A lot of managers complain about having too many meetings on their calendar. A lot of them. And I always ask those managers that I coach, I'm like, well, whose calendar is it? Is it your calendar or is it everybody else's calendar? That's your time. And so my team, when I get a new team member at work, the first meeting, the first one-on-one, I explain to them, my calendar is mine. Just because you see an open spot on it doesn't mean that it's free for you to take it. I've already allocated that time. If you send me a meeting request, same day or next day, it's an automatic decline because I've already allocated my time. If you send me a meeting request at least 3 days ahead and you don't already see 4 hours of meetings on my calendar, there's a chance I'll accept your meeting. If you see my calendar has 4 hours of meetings already on it, you're probably getting declined because I need that other time to do my work.
Yeah.
That time is not just sitting there to be claimed by somebody who wants to plant a flag and say, I need a meeting with Joe for an hour or half an hour, whatever it is. So that kind of discipline, right? That kind of discipline is what you have to bring home and say to yourself, I only get this much time. I have to utilize it to get the best outcome. And it just like at work, you'd analyze it and you would change your system. And my people made sure then that they didn't try to harangue me next day, same day. They made sure that they planned in advance and they got on my calendar when they saw a wide open day. They'd be like, that's my day with Joe.
Wow. Okay. So what I hear in that is definitely awareness is a big factor, right? They need to be aware. We want to have some clarity, some insight as to what's going on. And then once we see what's going on, start to come up with a path forward. But we need to be disciplined with how we utilize our time, disciplined with how we are requesting or asking for time of others. I think that's my key takeaway from what you just shared with us right there. With that in mind, if leadership is not just, something that we do at work, not just like a role or a title, maybe more of like a way of being, how does embracing that change how someone approaches their career and relationship?
Embracing leadership as a way of being is about serving the people that you lead. Mm-hmm. And that is something that's applicable in every single sphere, right? So authority is inversely proportional to the amount that you use it. The more you have to use authority, the less you have of it. Because it means you're force feeding whatever it is. You're not inspiring, you're not attracting, you're not getting the best out of people because you've just told them what to do and said, I expect this to be done. Instead of sharing the why, saying this is why we need to do this. Now, you can still have a disagreement. You want disagreement. I've said to my bosses, I will disagree with you about things. But once you decide and you use your authority to make a decision, I will execute on that decision as though it were my own. Because I've had my opportunity to share my disagreement, to share my reasons why. You're the one who gets to judge whether my reasons are convincing enough to make a decision in a different direction. And this kind of way of being, it's done as a service. It's done as a service to my leaders. it's done as a service to my household leadership counterparts, right? When I talk to my wife, everybody, sometimes they observe and they're like, wow, you guys have some really hard discussions. I said, yes, because then we don't sit there after the fact and say, if we only knew this, or if we only had said that, if you had only told me this, or if you had only, right? There's no excuses. We've wrestled with the topic, looked at it from all different ways. But once the decision is made, we don't relitigate, we don't go back, I told you so. It eliminates all those behaviors that negatively impact leadership, right? No leader should ever say, I told you so. That just demotivates people. I was right. You say, what did you learn? When my kids make a decision, even though I can see the future, right? I know what's going to happen. And I try to convince them. But that leadership is about letting people make their own decisions, making sure that if they fail, it's not irrecoverable, and then asking, what did you learn? Never I told you so, always what did you learn?
Is a gem. Always ask, what did they learn? Let them discover, let them embrace a lesson so they can utilize it. It always sounds better when it comes from within ourselves. Joe, we're getting close to the end of our time, and I want to ask you a closing question. If someone listening today wants to become a more grounded or integrated leader, what's one thing that they could reflect on this week?
I think reflection for the week should be, how's it going at home? Really sit and think about that. Part of this separation or compartmentalization is we focus on the task in the moment, or we try to put away, different parts of ourselves when we're working out, when we're at work, when we're going for a coffee, when we focus on the task at hand. Really spend some time reflecting and thinking about, how is it going at home? And is your household bringing you energy, or is it consuming energy? If you're not getting energized, you sit and think more deeply about whether or not your leadership could improve that energy status at home.
Wow. That is a great answer to our closing question. I love that. I will be reflecting on that myself. I will use that myself, Joe. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
For our audience, if this conversation made you think, please stay tuned, because we have more episodes that we plan to do with Joe. We're going to be talking about different areas of leadership in different phases of life. Also, Joe is sharing some of his leadership assessment tools via his website at homegrownleadership.net. So we will have the link in the bio. And thank you, Joe, so much for your time, for answering our questions. It's been a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Pleasure was all mine, Flip. Thanks again for the opportunity. Looking forward to more discussion.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. All right, everybody. Have a great day.